even now also. So media is also
And he never
divided.
got along with CNN throughout his presidency. He would always call them fake news, and you know.
And there is a Jewish lobby also behind it. I think that, you know, because he did so much for Israel, the Jewish lobby did want him to win again. And the media that you are pointing out, there are Israeli hands behind that.
Yeah, well, interesting times ahead. Let's see when we meet again after the inauguration. I hope and pray. Lives are precious. That nothing happens of that sort, since America is one of the largest, oldest democracies, and
we wish them well.
We wish everyone well, and we wish, because you know, if a superpower gets, I mean, if there's a problem, that is going to be a serious issue. But anyway, thank you so much, sir.
My pleasure.
And that's all we have for this week. Inshallah, I'll see you again. Till then, you take good care. Khuda Hafiz.
The Badshah Mosque, or the Royal Mosque in Lahore, commissioned by the 6th Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb in 1671 and completed in 1673, is the second largest mosque in Pakistan and South Asia and the 5th largest mosque in the world. Epitomizing the beauty, passion and grandeur of the Mughal era. It is Lahore's most famous landmark and a major tourist attraction. Capable of accommodating 5,000 worshippers in its main prayer hall and a further 95,000 in its courtyard, it remains the largest mosque in the world. From 1673 to 1986, a period of 313 years. When overtaken in size by the completion of the Faisal Mosque in Islamabad. Today, it remains the second largest mosque in Pakistan and South Asia and the 5th largest mosque in the world after Masjid al-Haram, Grand Mosque of Mecca, and Al-Masjid al-Nabwi, Prophet's Mosque in Medina. The Hassan II Mosque in Casablanca and the Faisal Mosque in Islamabad. To appreciate its large size, the 4 minarets of the Badshah Mosque are 13.9 feet, 4.2 meters taller than those of the Taj Mahal, and the main platform of the Taj Mahal can fit inside the 278,784 square feet courtyard of the Badshah Mosque, which is the largest mosque courtyard in the world. Architectural wonders of Pakistan.
Magla Hills, the heaven of Islamabad. The abode of God, a place where you can explore your soul and meet power of natural elegance of mountains. Spread over an area of 12,605 hectares, the Magla Range, the foothills of Himalayas, are youngest hills with an age of 5,000 years old. Magla Hills are home to around 600 plant species, 250 bird varieties, 38 mammals and 13 species of reptiles. Magla Range is characterized by many valleys, scenic spots and beautiful water streams, especially in the monsoon months. Famous for their tranquil environment and lush green natural splendor, Margla Hills are a particular source of pride, harmony and spiritual delight. For the residents of Islamabad, many of whom make it a weekly ritual to scale the various trails to Damanipur and Pir Suhara. Margla Hills stand up its visitors with lasting trail of memories to relish in solitude and provide an escape from the relentless rhythm of life.
Prime Minister Imran Khan assures Azerbaijan's Foreign Minister of Pakistan's full support in reconstruction and development of recently liberated land of Nagorno-Karabakh. Azeri Foreign Minister says his country will continue to support Pakistan's stance on Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir issue. The President reaffirms Pakistan's support for territorial integrity of Azerbaijan, congratulates the government and the people of Azerbaijan over the liberation of Nagorno-Karabakh. Security forces killed 2 terrorists in an intelligence-based operations on 2 terrorist hideouts in North Waziristan. 3 soldiers also embraced martyrdom. International credit rating agency Moody's improves its rating for Pakistan's banking sector as stable. Says government's credit profile is stable due to ongoing reforms and increasing policy effectiveness. Donald Trump becomes the first president in U.S. history to be impeached twice after being charged with incitement of insurrection over last week's deadly storming of Congress. Central Punjab, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Balochistan win their matches in the Pakistan Cup one-day cricket tournament in Karachi. PTV Sports telecaster went live. This is PTV World. I'm Ahmed Nawaz. Those were the headlines for the hour. But for further details and live streaming, log on to our website. You may also log on to our social media handles. Stay tuned. Coming up next is Perspective with Mahrukh, Hameed.
Politics is not everybody's cup of tea. In Pakistan, politics has endless possibilities. Politics is the art of the possible. But we have got you covered. Debate. For in-depth analysis. And insight. Watch Politics Today every Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday at 9:05 p.m. with me, Farooq Fatah.
Raise your words, not voice. It is rain that grows flowers, not thunder.
Just like the billboard paintings performed in Pakistan, there is another indigenous form of art performed in Pakistan, and it is the truck art, with its all colorful floral patterns depicted.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. The recent alleged revelations of Mosavi, which have had the effect that seems to be like that of the second Panama, we'll be talking about that. We'll also be talking about what it means for the politics of this country when corruption has been the narrative of not only this government but all successive governments. It's been something that has been thrown back and forth. What does this mean for politics of this country? What does this mean for the National Accountability Bureau? What does this mean for the future of the accountability process in Pakistan? How credible does it leave the process? How will the government and the opposition both see it? It's certainly being celebrated by both, but what does it mean? What are the likely next steps, if any, that the government will follow, the opposition will take? Let's talk about all of that today. I have with me Barrister Safiullah Gauri, who is a legal expert. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Javed Jadoon, who is a political analyst. Thank you for joining us. We'll also be joined by Abdul Samad Yaqoob, who's leader PTI. Thank you for joining us today. Safiullah, let's start off with you. How do you see the revelations that have come up? Because we've seen, this looks like a second, of course it's a Pandora box, and we've seen the new revelations come up now, the way that it's been, it's like a second Panama, if nothing else. How do you see it?
Mahrukh, absolutely. I feel like in a way it's much worse than a second Panama because of the damning evidence that has come about. So if we were to just look at everything that has happened recently, I'll just give you a quick recap of the story, or at least what Mosavi is stating. So Mosavi states that a judgment has come out in Mosavi's favor by the International Arbitration Tribunal in London by a very celebrated judge named Sir Anthony Evans. And in this judgment, Mosavi was granted $30 million. And this grant of $30 million happened solely because of the negligence of one agency, which is NAB. Not negligence, in fact, I would say the malified behavior of one agency, NAB, which has resulted in this huge loss of our exchequer. And so after we experienced this huge loss, Mosavi tells us that Shahzad Akbar led a team of several generals and a few politicians from the PTI government, took them to London. They had a meeting in North London in Café Rouge. All of this was on record, by the way, because there were lawyers from famous law firms like Allen & Overy, which you've no doubt heard of. There was also Pakistan's lawyer there, QC Zafar Ali. In front of all these people, the PTI government first asked him to give them a discount on the judgment, and when Mosavi stated this is a court judgment, he cannot give discounts on it. This is not a common shop of vegetables or fruits where you discount someone. So after that, the PTI government stated that they want to negotiate with Mosavi somehow. So Mosavi stated that their firm has found several fake accounts containing billions of dollars in London. And so as per the older agreement, if Pakistan agrees to re-engage Broadsheet, then they will send billions of dollars back to Pakistan and keep their cut of 20%, as was originally the agreement between Broadsheet and Musharraf. To our extreme shock and awe, the PTI government and some of the senior PTI leaders, some have been named, some have not been named, along with some generals, asked Mosavi what their cut will be. And so to which Mosavi stated that their cut will be 80%, which is going to the government of Pakistan. And they once again stated, this is all happening in a corruption case. In a corruption case, corruption money is found. Because Pakistan lost that corruption case, Pakistan was fined $30 million. And once again, they're asking for money, once again for more money on that. But
what's really, interesting about this case, other than the revelations, of course, is the fact that you see the opposition celebrating it and you see the government celebrating it, of course, and the government is also saying that it goes to prove the narrative of the government regarding corruption, regarding the fact that accountability should be there as far as Pakistan is concerned. To that extent, things seem to be right. I'll come back to you. I'm going to go to Javed Saab. Javed Saab, that is true, you know. In that sense, when, you know, the Prime Minister says or the PTI government says that it vindicates them as far as the issue of corruption is concerned, the issue of accountability is concerned. Isn't that right?
Thank you very much, Mahrukh. I think there are two dimensions to this whole particular situation. One is that there's a checkered history of accountability in Pakistan. Over the time period, we have seen that it has been more of a political witch hunt rather than across-the-board accountability. Because corruption is everywhere in Pakistani society, be that the political realm or the bureaucratic realm or even the business section of the society, the big businesses, etc. So I think looking at the corruption as in a holistic manner would have been the most appropriate thing, but of course due to certain political expediencies, even in the past we have been lenient towards certain sections of the society and maybe a bit harsh towards the others. For example, this particular firm was contracted in 1999 and then the contract was terminated in 2003. And as the CEO of the broadsheet himself stated that 200 people's list was handed over to the broadsheet, and then ultimately probably because of the interference of the government, certain individuals, they wanted to be spared or they wanted to be sidelined as far as the probe was concerned. But the second dimension is why these revelations now? Because the contract was terminated in 2003 and then everything went under the carpet, and all of a sudden the CEO of Broadsheet comes forward, and in my personal opinion, because of my journalistic background as well, he goes to a journalist, a YouTuber, and then he gives the interview, and revelations are made and people are named and shamed and accusations are hurled as well. This is my very personal opinion, that why we started giving this gentleman so much of importance, that every Pakistani media outlet, every political figure in Pakistan, be that from the government or the opposition, started talking about the broadsheet, and then of course Mr. Musavi also talked about the inability of the NAB to go after certain individuals, and then he also talked about a gentleman having $1 billion account in London, not naming him, while on the contrary he was naming certain individuals, but this particular individual with $1 billion stacked away somewhere in offshore company or offshore account, he wasn't named. I think for me, I think it's just a storm in the teacup, and we are taking too much meaning out of it.
You think it's not credit-worthy? You think that we're giving too much credit to what he's saying?
For me, I think this is what I believe.
Right, okay. Fazila, before I go to Abdul.
Very quickly, I'd just like to answer the two questions that Javed Saab raised. One was why now, and the other one was why was an individual having $1 billion in their account not named. Why now? Because now is when they won the judgment from the Court of Appeal, and the Court of Appeal froze the accounts of the Pakistani High Commission in London. That is why, because now is when Pakistan has to pay. And so this is what the relevance of the time is, and this is why it has suddenly become such a big issue. And the second reason is why an individual is not being named is because it is a firm that has been engaged with certain confidentiality issues, and if they name the person who has the $1 billion, they will lose their ability to go after him. If they were to, because that person will then in that case take what you would call preemptive measures against any legal action that Broadsheet could take against them. So as not to identify in one individual clearly, they have left something of this sort open.
Right, okay, I will come back to you. Abdul Samad Sahab, how do you see the situation today as far as the government is concerned? Of course, you know, a lot of things are being said against government people, against the delegation that went to Broadsheet. You've heard the allegations that are coming from Mosavi also. What's your take on this?
Well, first of all, the first participant, as he mentioned, that it is a sort of second Panama, I would second in. It's not just a second Panama, I would say it was the first NRO which was given way before the 2000, the actual NRO which was given on 2007. I mean, the first time when the contract was terminated in 2003, I would call it the NRO, which was, as Javed Jadoon has mentioned, that to exempt few politicians at that time, Shefau and some others. Well, as far as the government is concerned, I mean, when since we came into the power, we just continued the same litigation process which was already there. I mean, at that time we went for the appeal. I mean, the verdict came in 2017 when the first time the London Court of International Arbitration gave the verdict and put the penalty of $17 million. It was actually $17 million, and then $3 million was the amount of the cost of the case. And then later, when we went for the appeal, and then later these $8 million, probably more than $8 million, that is in form of like interest rate. And still, this Mousavi is that firm is demanding $3 million more. I mean, probably it will end up on $31 million. Anyways, I mean, we have nothing to do with it.
You have said, the Prime Minister has also said, and the PTI has also said that as far as this broadsheet, the revelations are concerned, they vindicate the corruption narrative that the government has been talking about, the accountability, and the fact that we have seen in the past, you know, the successive governments, the corruption of it. But does it also vindicate PTI? Because we've also seen the allegations that he's making as far as the delegation itself.
No, vindicated in a sense when the revelation was these were first revealed by Mousavi, then the Maryam Nawaz again, as usual, celebrated like the way they used to celebrate it, the earlier celebration, and then they realized that perhaps this is going to be against them. As far as PTI is concerned, we came into the power. We got the mandate that yes, there is a corruption. I mean, even it was us that
what is this about a cut that NAB has asked for, which is also one of the allegations at this time?
I didn't get you, pardon.
I'm saying that now that the allegations as far as the delegation that has gone to negotiate, the allegations against them as far as asking for a cut, asking for some sort of a money rebate, or for the lack of a better word. What do you say to this?
I believe there should be an investigation on these serious allegations. I mean, we shouldn't leave it like this. This is the serious allegations on the present government or some authorities or representative of the present government. I mean, it must be. Not only the present government,
it's also NAB. It's also some of those people who have been selected to actually oversee the corruption in this country. And if they themselves are tainted, we really need to look at reevaluate the picture. Isn't that true?
No, it is not clear yet that who has actually negotiated with, who has actually asked for the cut. I mean, previously there was a settlement with probably in 2009 or later in 2012. I think there was a settlement with this Mousavi, this organization. I mean, this company, and then it was revealed that the settlement was done by unauthorized persons. So it is not clear yet that who has actually asked for the cut. I mean,
but it is somebody who was part of the delegation from the government. To that extent, we know, right?
He has accused someone. I mean, perhaps some journal or I don't know. I'm not sure. But the thing should be clear. I mean, as far as now, these are allegations. I mean.
But who is going to investigate?
I mean, I think federal investigation agency or some standing committee can form some committee to investigate it.
You're not sure. I mean, there's no. You don't know if there's anybody who's been. If there is such a committee that has been formed.
I think the other panelist can better. Perhaps he can better tell us that who actually can constitutionally who actually can investigate it.
Okay, I will come back to you. Please, pass this up.
So, Mahrukh, I think it's all very interesting when we look at it. Broadsheet has no doubt cast a shadow on every single person, every single political party in Pakistan and all the major institutions as well. So Broadsheet in their various investigations have come forward and they have said that in Pakistan what we know for a fact, the people who are corrupt are PMLN, because they have found their assets. They have said that we have found assets of People's Party. They said that we have found assets of JUIF, and now they're saying that we have found assets beyond any doubt of PTI. So they are blaming everybody across the board, but it's not just these parties. So we have to put everything back in perspective. Broadsheet was a firm that was hired to help NAB. And now Broadsheet is coming out and saying that the most corrupt institution within Pakistan is NAB. NAB is the reason why there is corruption in Pakistan, because NAB is that singular organization that is whitewashing people, that is milking the people of Pakistan and continuing to give rebates and remands to different people, and we see that. We see that actually happening. We see that, in fact, there have been very little recoveries. But it's not just that. What's worse is these delegations that are going back and forth from London. An entire person was nominated solely for the purpose of recovering money by this government. And so far Pakistan has spent millions and millions on just transportation costs, on hiring the most expensive law firms, and our recovery has been zero, absolutely 0 rupees. Not a single rupee has come back to Pakistan to date. And these people are being trusted consistently. When we were just asked who would be a part of this investigation, who would come forward, I've just stated the law firms involved in this investigation, the law firms involved in these negotiations, these are big law firms, these are not small people, these are corporate institutions in themselves. There is Barrister Zafar Ali QC, who has been acting on behalf of Pakistan. There is Alan & Overy, which has been engaged on behalf of Pakistan. Every single one of these international firms have expressed displeasure at the way Pakistan is dealing with it, because of the way corruption is taking place and because of the behavior of NAB that is continuing to increase the corruption problems in Pakistan rather than reduce it. So yes, I feel that in a way everybody should celebrate, because Broadsheet has found the other party to be corrupt, but it is a moment of absolute reflection and shame, and one of those few moments where I feel like we should really just take a step back and wonder why we are so corrupt.
What do you think will happen as far as NAB is concerned, as far as...
No, Mahrukh, nothing will happen, because nothing has happened. There have been, think of all the scandals that have just taken place within this government. Leaving aside the previous scandals that have taken place, but in just this government we have seen a sugar crisis, we have seen a wheat crisis, we have seen this gas crisis. You know, they make these investigation committees, nothing happens. And why this crisis is the worst possible crisis is because we see that there is one organization that is responsible for checking corruption.
That itself
is so corrupt that another organization that was engaged to stop corruption is saying that this is the most corrupt organization possible.
Okay. Javed Saab, how do you look at the whole scenario at this time? How do you see things as far as, at this time, if we look at NAB itself, we've seen so many, we've seen the comments of different courts on this organization, this institution as far as NAB is concerned. We've seen the opposition's view, whoever is in the opposition at the time, there is a victimization narrative. And we also know the fact that the government today came into being and has stood for accountability. That is one of the main reasons, and that is what the Prime Minister himself, has always said, that he's an honest man. And I don't think most people have two opinions on that. But as far as his honesty is concerned and his reassurance again and again that he will not give an NRO, the question that perhaps now needs to be looked at is who is going to be given an NRO? Is it the NAB? Is NAB the institution? If it is responsible, then we've been debating reform also. Are we going to dismantle it, or nothing will happen in your opinion?
Mark, first of all, I think we'll have to find homegrown solutions to our problems. When we start looking towards the external experts, and we believe that probably we are not able to conduct ourselves as far as accountability drive is concerned. Mr. Musavi, in my personal opinion, is trying to discredit Pakistan's entire political system. He went after Pakistan Muslim League N first, and probably in his very first interview he said something, and then Maryam Nawaz came forward with a statement that, well, the broadsheet is the statement of Mr. Musavi vindicates PMLN's position. And then he said he was misquoted, and then he started talking about how he was, Mr. Nawaz Sharif's nephew approached him and he tried to bribe him as well. $25 million were offered And then all of a sudden the game changed. Then Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf started talking about how Pakistan Muslim League N is being cast in a dark shadow. And then Mr. Musavi in his second interview goes after Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, and he talks about a delegation approaching him in London and trying to cut a deal with them. So why can't we look at the whole situation with a pinch of salt, that probably this gentleman is trying to discredit Pakistan's entire political system?
To what end?
To what end? To definitely some agenda, some targeted approach, because Pakistan is definitely all the times, Pakistan is in the eye of the storm. Pakistan's geostrategic location, Pakistan's nuclear program, and Pakistan's differences with certain major global powers, including the USA, etc.
But if he had been paid the money, according to Safiullah, if I'm wrong, please correct me. But the Court of Appeal judgment, and before that, the earlier judgment, which had said that $30 million were owed to him, if Pakistan had paid that money, he probably wouldn't have made these revelations.
I agreed. There's no doubt in that. I think it was on part of Pakistan government that they left the door open for such kind of an onslaught on part of Mr. Musavi against Pakistan.
No, but
he
then
says that Pakistan's entire...
about anything except...
But I don't understand why we are giving this gentleman so much of importance.
Because he's saying...
Does he belong to certain agencies, certain international organization, which is a credible organization, which is a credible international institution? He does not belong to the United Nations.
But he is credible enough for us to have contacted him.
He doesn't belong to the IMF. He doesn't belong to the World Bank. He doesn't belong to any multilateral institution. He is an individual, not even in Britain.
Who we have contacted successfully. We did when President Musharraf was the president of the country. We have now also.
Then the contract was terminated in 2003.
But now again, NAB did contact him.
According to NAB, the gentleman, his organization was not able to recover any amount of money, though he definitely contest this particular assertion.
But there is a court judgment now.
Of course, there is a court judgment. But why can't we confine it to the court judgment alone?
You're saying just quietly pay the money and forget about it.
It's not. The payment was a part of the agreement between 1999 and 2003. Right. It doesn't has to do anything with Pakistan's political system, with Pakistan's accountability system, and Pakistan's political parties. He's talking about the amount he recovered, or the amount he probably pinpointed, which was parked outside in offshore accounts, and he says that amount he pinpointed, probably certain amount was recovered and even transferred to the government of Pakistan. This is what he says. But on the contrary, Pakistan National Accountability
Bureau. But have we denied this? We're saying that we didn't get any money.
Of course. Then whom do you believe? The government of Pakistan, or a single individual known as Mr. Musafi, who is the CEO of Broadsheet?
Okay, I will come back to you. I know that you want to say something. I will come back to you, Barrister Safiullah Ghori. I'm going to go to Abdul Samad Yaqub ji. Samad sahab, do you know that we are contesting his claim that money in fact never came to Pakistan? Is that true?
Well, we certainly cannot discredit, wholly discredit this Musavi. As he said that in 2002 he had traced $3.5 million of share power. And then he asked NAB to follow it up and send a letter to, cooperate with him. That he alleged NAB that the NAB didn't, at that time the NAB didn't pursue it. So that's the reason the contract was terminated. If someone is saying that the task he was given, he has traced down some assets. So I cannot totally discredit this Musavi. And secondly, no matter whatever his hidden agenda is, we can say that okay, he could have a lot of hidden agendas or is working on someone's agendas, but we have to look at ourselves. We have to bring the reforms in the NAB. I would second this Barrister Saab. Yes, we have to see at ourselves. This is not the solution that we discredit someone and then says that no, everything is right at over. We have to put our house in order first. I mean, there were certain, even previously there was a lot of allegation, even when Prime Minister was in opposition. He was the first one who always raised the voice to bring the reforms in the NAB. I mean, there should be reforms, and there should be, even the FIA should be more efficient, that not only the NAB.
But the point is, can FIA investigate NAB? That's also a question, and whether any other committee that is then formed, we will, of course, there has to be the issue of credibility there also. I'll come back to you,
NAB is actually so autonomous that when they make a contact with an international agency or international firm, the government cannot even question them. I mean, same is the case with this firm of Musavi. I mean,
so you are saying that basically NAB is, on its own. NAB is itself so powerful that the government really can't question it.
It's an autonomous body. I mean, government cannot question at all.
Right. But what about individuals? Right, I'll come back to you. Safila, what about individuals that have been, imposed on NAB, for example, if imposed is the right word, to investigate? What about those individuals? Their credibility, their honesty itself is now something that needs to be looked at.
Absolutely, Mahrukh. So I think I'll second Yaqub Saab when he states that NAB is an autonomous body, and unfortunately, the way Pakistani law is structured, there is no agency that can look into what NAB is doing, but NAB can look into everybody else, and so that creates a huge power disbalance. This is not a proper way of separation of powers as it is. But just to sort of take a step back and understand this judgment, because I feel like, discrediting Musavi is not going to serve any purpose. Even if he were to be a person, let's just presume, even if we were to presume that he's a person who's working
who has an agenda,
even if we were to presume all of that, the fact remains that if you look at this case from a legal perspective, you'll understand why Musavi is doing what Musavi is doing. So Musavi was to be paid 20% of any recoveries that he made. Musavi made a recovery from one individual named General Admiral Mansoor Haq,
which is what he says.
Which is what he says, but the court upheld. Because he showed the bank transfers to the government of Pakistan.
So we know
that because the court has consistently vindicated his stance.
So you're saying that the court, I just want to make sure that everybody understands. Basically, the court has substantiated his claim that the money did come to Pakistan.
The money did come to Pakistan. The $200 million were sent back to Pakistan through his firm Broadsheet LLC.
To NAB.
To NAB. And so he was to be given his 20% of the share, which NAB did not give him because NAB wanted their cut when he was to be given that 20%.
And that NAB was a very different NAB from what it is today.
Yes, but that's the funny thing. He says that he has been in consistent negotiations with NAB, and NAB is just as corrupt now as it was then, and he has stated that publicly, that because obviously when there's a case going on, you remain in negotiations, in commercial settlements with all parties. This is a standard in all legal proceedings. So NAB has continued to be corrupt. In fact, he says that perhaps then it was slightly less corrupt. Now it is even more corrupt. And so we have this amount of, so he sent back $20 million to Pakistan. 20% of that would be, I think, $4 million. $4 million that kept on increasing because of litigation costs and because of interest and various other things, expanding up to 30 million. Now Musavi himself states, and this is a challenge to the government, that if they think that he has any vested interest, then let's show the government of the people of Pakistan what the judgment is. Why is the judgment being hidden from us? Hakan Abbasi has asked for it, People's Party has asked for it, but the reality is, Mahrukh, nobody will show it to anyone. Because in the Court of Appeal, Musavi was challenged, and he was asked as to what work he has done in uncovering the corruption of Pakistan. So he has an interest in the corruption in the political parties of Pakistan, because that's what his job is. He uncovers corruption, he sends money back, and he gets 20% of anything, so he knows who is corrupt, who is not. And so in the Court of Appeal, he gave a list of all the people and all the accounts that he has discovered, which includes the PTI government, which includes the military,
across the board
political parties and the military and the other institutions and NAB, and various other people who have power in Pakistan. And so that is the reason why the present government is not showing us the judgment either.
Why is the judgment not a public document?
That's a very interesting question. So when it comes to issues like these, of public sensitivity and issues, it is a request by the government of Pakistan to the Court of Appeal to keep it hidden, because they make it a national security issue. Demands and constant applications have gone from the government of Pakistan, and this can become a public document, by the way, if Musavi were to challenge it. So if it were to become worse, he would challenge it, and we might even see who those people were against whom investigations were conducted and how much money was
have to
found.
rule whether it can be made
Absolutely,
a public document or not, or extracts from it can be revealed if
perhaps the whole judgment will be revealed whenever it is. But that's the challenge of the present government. Can the government share this judgment with the people of Pakistan?
Right. Javed, do you think that the government will take such a step?
I think, Mahrukh, let's talk about the way forward.
Okay.
Let's assume that whatever Mr. Musavi is saying is correct, and his allegations against Pakistan's institutions and the political parties and the figures are correct. Then the government in power, what they need to do.
Okay.
They can form a top judicial probe consisting the senior judges of the Supreme Court of Pakistan, and they should be given the task to probe all the allegations made by Mr. Musavi, made against every individual in Pakistan who have been named, and even those who have not been named. The terms of the reference should be that let's start the cleansing of the system, as he has pointed out. I think I do agree with him that it is about time that we should start a process where the institutions should be reformed. Particularly, we are talking about the National Accountability
Board. But to the extent, as we were before, you were talking about the fact that the government of course has two duties. One, of course, that it has to make sure that the truth is revealed. But on the other hand, it also has another duty. Don't you think it has, we have to acknowledge it has the duty to somehow salvage whatever comes out of this judgment. So, we can sit here and say, and I agree on one level with what Pastor Safiullah is saying, that should be made public, or, but the other point
is... Safiullah is talking about the judgment.
Right.
I am talking about the holistic probe conducted by the government of Pakistan, conducted by the judiciary, conducted by a judicial commission, just like on the pattern of the Panama. Because as was stated by Safiullah at the outset that it is the second Panama, or maybe more important than Panama, then why not go for the same kind of a probe in this respect as well? So ultimately, we will be able to find the scapegoats. We will be able to find the real culprits. We will be able to find the cure to the system as well. Otherwise, I think allegations will remain allegations, and after some time, this particular topic will disappear from Pakistani media. And then I think, what is the point in talking about this? Unless and until the government, the second government.
Those allegations again. If we find, if we do get access to the judgment, if the Pakistani government agrees to open this judgment,
absolutely,
then we will have substantiated.
This is what I said. It is the prime responsibility of the sitting government, because they need to get the judgment. If they don't have it, if they get the judgment, they should make it public as well. If they make it public, I think then the second phase or the second step should be to constitute a judicial commission. Otherwise, I think there's no other forum. Talking in the media, because I think we can talk about, back and forth. We can talk about the allegations, but we really can't get to the bottom of the situation. The only way forward is the judicial commission, my personal opinion. I think.
But before I go to Samad Sabji, Safiullah, but don't you think they also have a fiduciary duty to make sure that whatever the spill is from this judgment, it has to be curtailed? Because there's, of course, we're talking about Pakistan, we're talking about Pakistani institutions, we're talking about Pakistani, across the board, Pakistan political parties. We don't know what's in the judgment.
Yes, and so, Mahrukh, once again, I'll go back to the fact that the accounts of the High Commission in Pakistan have been frozen by the Court of Appeal in London.
So they have to
and obviously, we have to pay the money. But instead of paying the money, or instead of trying to contain the spill, or instead of trying to do something that will help us move forward, the claims that are coming forward is that the government is asking for its cut.
But Safiullah, now it is not the question of paying the money. Now it is the big question is the question mark over Pakistan's political, judicial, and the accountability process in Pakistan as well.
Right.
And so, by the way, very interestingly, that's another thing. When we talk about discrediting such a man, he's come forward with a lot of evidence. In fact, you can follow him on Twitter and see the kind of things he's posting, and he's showing messages that are being sent to him by top-ranking generals in Pakistan who are just trying to contact him for one thing or the other. And so, yes, of course, I do feel 100% I agree that we need to constitute a proper judicial probe into this. We need to constitute a high-ranking bench, and we need to look into this, and we need to, for God's sake, change ourselves. We can't continue like this as a country. This is an absolute madness. This is a banana republic. that is continuously happening.
Ji, Samad Sahab, do you agree? Do you think that there's a possibility of that kind of probe being established? Do you think that there is a possibility that this judgment can be made public also?
Well, I think morally it should be published. I mean, it should be published and it should be revealed to the public. And secondly, Jadul Sahab was asking for the Judicial Commission. I would go further that this matter should be taken on the floor of the House in the Parliament and then should be taken in the Public Accounts Committee. Public Accounts Committee is the only committee.
The Public Accounts Committee, by this, I mean, we don't know, but I mean, one assumes that the people in the Parliament, some of them at least, will be implicated.
At least it should be. What I was going to tell you was that the Public Accounts Committee is the only committee who can summon the chairman of NAB. I mean, they can question him. Only standing committee or the Finance Committee can question him. So this should be resolved on the permanent basis. I mean, for how long we will face this kind of allegations if it is not resolved on the permanent footings? I mean,
but my question is, as far as NAB is concerned, how long will any government, whichever government is in power, continue to as it were, save NAB or because as far as reform on NAB law is concerned, clearly we're making no headway on that. There is, controversiality as far as when we talk about, amending NAB, amendments of NAB are concerned. Because, if you talk about the government says that the things that the opposition is asking for clearly amounts to an NRO. The opposition, I'm sure you've been hearing this for some time, also says that it is actually, a way of victimizing them. So who will dismantle NAB? Will it be dismantled? There must be a way to deal with this disaster also.
And it's not about dismantling or abandoning NAB. It's actually when we try to bring the reforms and when we discuss this matter in the committee, the special committee which was formed based on 34 members. I mean, first of all, every political party should come up with the neat and clean intentions. I mean, if they have the agenda of their benefits, I mean, if they are convicted or their cases are in the NAB, they should come with the clear intentions to bring the reforms for the long run. I mean, in the long run, not just to gain some benefits for time being. I mean, to resolve their personal gains. I mean, so as far as we should wait for the Senate election and then we should form a committee which comes if it is concluded. I mean, and if this government could bring the reforms, then maybe things will be better. But if this government is failed, then I don't think that it can be ever resolved. I mean, the reforms can be brought. I don't think so.
Okay. Ji, Safullah, what do you think will happen?
I think, Mahrukh, unfortunately, I don't see any headway. I don't want to be a negative person, but the reality is, Mahrukh, that NAB has not performed. NAB has conducted a massive witch hunt, if you were to say, but whatever this persecution drive, whatever it is, NAB tried to prosecute a lot of people. NAB arrested Zardari, NAB arrested Nawaz Sharif, Khwaja Saad Rafiq, Khwaja Asif, practically every politician that is not in the government. And we don't see a singular case in which NAB has recovered anything. But now what we see is that because of NAB's multiple failures, we have to pay another company $30 million. And on top of that, what we hear are allegations that NAB is asking to give them cuts if they want their $30 million, which is despite the fact that our accounts are frozen. So I really feel like there is something very wrong with the overall structure. I think that we need to really think about why we are even looking at NAB for answers, because NAB is really the responsibility here. I think absolutely, like has been said before, maybe we should talk about dismantling NAB or changing NAB altogether. But whatever needs to be done right now, and this is more evidence than we could have ever had.
So, but the point is, even if whatever we do with NAB, the point is, however we look at our system, we evaluate what's happening, there's something very wrong here. But the point is, if we are we going to pay? I mean, we have no choice. We have to either pay the money or what? What happened?
In this particular scenario, so as Musavi himself stated that Musavi offered to let Pakistan go of the 30 million if he is allowed to investigate into the further corrupt people, in which case, like we said, a gentleman who has 1 billion and several other accounts with millions on them, and he has put this offer, like, don't pay me 30 million, let me give you some money instead and keep my 20%. But unfortunately, that's something that's not acceptable to the government either, because they want their cuts. So this is the reason. This is why I feel like we have reached a complete impasse.
So
we are bent upon corruption, and there is no way we can get out of it.
But you think that, I mean, it might just come to the fact that we will have to pay him, even if we don't do, a further agreement of the
Of course, it's not like we will pay him happily. Our accounts are frozen. Our properties will be auctioned off in London. He will get his money.
Javed sir, what do you think? In your opinion, what will happen? Do you think that we will just pay the money? Do you think there will be a probe? In your opinion, what's the realistic expectation here? Not what should happen, but what will like
I agree with this notion that ultimately government of Pakistan will have to pay him, because Pakistan High Commission's accounts have been frozen, and I don't believe any other option is left with the government of Pakistan. I think, Mahrukh, it's about time now we should start talking very seriously about how to change Pakistan. There comes the most important commitment on part of Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf to introduce holistic reforms, institutional reforms. Because if we start going for the reforms, even now we can correct the situation in Pakistan. And I think we should start from Pakistan's National Accountability Bureau. Accountability Bureau has been probably become the most controversial institution in Pakistan. I think every political party, even the big business and other stakeholders, they have certain reservations towards whatever the current status of NAB is. They would like to have certain changes introduced, of course, with the consensus among all political stakeholders. Why not start with reforming Pakistan's accountability organization, and then we should go for the judicial reforms, and then we should go for the bureaucratic reforms, and then we should go for the economic reforms as well. We should go for the overall societal change as well. Without, I think, introducing these very concrete measures in Pakistan, how can you expect changes, what we are talking about right now? I think we all are optimistic. We strongly believe that Pakistan has a destiny. Pakistan is a nation of over 200 million people and very, I think, talented population, natural resources, Pakistan's geostrategic location, I think many more other advantages Pakistan enjoys right now. But why Pakistan really can't take off the way other regional countries have taken off? Look at where were Malaysia, Indonesia, South Korea, Philippines, Vietnam. Even Vietnam, I think, was a broken society. Look how they have risen. Bangladesh even, and not to talk about other regional countries, except I think we have got societal problems, societal issues. So I think there should be a serious debate, Mahrukh. Otherwise, I think issues come, we talk about these issues, we debate them in the media, and then these issues disappear, and then the media focuses on some other issue. Now here we are talking about Musavi's allegations. I think these are very, very serious allegations. And serious allegations really can't be debated in the media. They should be debated on the floor of the House. And then I think if there is a need to be probed, then it should be probed, and ultimately the people responsible must be found and punished as well.
The only reason why they will eventually be discussed on the floor of the House is because they're being discussed in the media. Because we can't ignore the fact that there are a lot of these people who are implicated.
But the problem is when you discuss this particular issue on the floor of the House, I don't believe there's going to be any concrete outcome, because all the political stakeholders are being accused. So I think I don't see a very positive outcome on the floor of the House. Only I think, in my opinion, the judicial probe is the only way forward, and it should be done.
Unfortunately, we're out of time. Thank you so much for joining us today. Barrister Safiullah Ghori, thank you for being with us. Javed Zadoon Saab, thank you for joining us. Abdul Samad Yaqoob Saab, thank you for being with us today. As far as the issue when the Prime Minister says that it vindicates him, it does to the extent, there is no denying that today when PTI stood for accountability, it stood for corruption. Whenever the Prime Minister has spoken, during, even before the government came in and after the 2 years, corruption has been point one on his agenda. Today, all of the stuff that Mousavi has said proves the fact that there is that kind of corruption that riddles this country. There is that kind of corruption that is perhaps, when we talk about astronomical figures like billions and millions, which to a layman is just, sums that